No one expected this, because what started as a normal pregnancy turned into a nightmare that made an entire town whisper one terrifying question: what was really growing inside Maren? Maren lived in a quiet rural corner of Montana, where life moved slowly and everyone knew each other's business. She was known as the kind, soft-spoken woman who inherited her parents' horse ranch after they passed away. People respected her, until the rumors began. At first, everything seemed normal. Maren smiled more often, ate differently, and soon, her belly started to show. The neighbors assumed the obvious: she was pregnant. They congratulated her, brought homemade pies, and asked the usual questions. But Maren didn't answer clearly. She just smiled and changed the subject. Then something changed. Within just a few weeks, her stomach grew far too fast.
Not slightly unusual, impossibly fast.
Women who had given birth their whole lives started whispering behind her back.
That's not normal. Not even twins grow like that.
The tone shifted from curiosity to suspicion. And then came the detail that made everything worse. Maren spent nearly all her time in the horse barn. Especially with one animal, Onyx, a massive black stallion. She talked to it like it understood her. Touched it gently. Stayed there for hours, even late at night. At first, people thought it was just grief-loneliness habit. But in a small town, silence never lasts. The jokes began quietly, then louder, then cruel. Someone laughed at the diner: "You ever seen a woman that close to a horse all day?" Another replied, "Don't tell me you're thinking what I'm thinking." Laughter exploded, but it didn't stop there. The idea spread like wildfire. Within days, the whispers turned into accusations. They started calling her the woman carrying something unnatural. Alder, her husband, didn't believe any of it, at first. He ignored the stares, the half-spoken comments, the sudden silence whenever he walked into a room. But one day at the local market, an older woman pulled him aside and spoke in a low, uneasy voice. "You need to look at your wife. That's not a normal pregnancy." That was the moment something cracked inside him. Because deep down he had seen it too. The size of her belly. The way she avoided talking about the baby. The long hours in the barn. And worst of all, the strange distance growing between them, like something unseen was standing right in the middle of their marriage. That evening, Alder didn't wait. He walked straight into the barn. And there she was. Maren sat beside Onyx, her hand resting gently on its neck, whispering softly as if sharing a secret. The horse stood still, almost like it was listening. When Alder stepped closer, Onyx suddenly lifted its head and moved, blocking his path. Alder froze. For a split second, a chilling thought crossed his mind. Was this all just coincidence? Or was there something happening here that no one dared to say out loud? He looked at his wife. Then at the horse. And for the first time since the rumors began, he wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Alder didn't sleep that night. The image of Maren in the barn, her hand on Onyx, the horse stepping in front of him like a silent warning, kept replaying in his head. Every rumor he had ignored suddenly came back, louder, sharper, impossible to push away. The next morning, he made a decision. No more guessing. No more silence. He would get the truth. Maren was already outside when he woke up, standing near the fence, one hand holding her lower back as if the weight had become too much. Her belly looked even bigger than yesterday. Not gradually, noticeably. That alone made Alder's chest tighten. "We're going to the hospital," he said, firm, leaving no space for argument.
Maren hesitated.
Just for a second. But Alder saw it. That hesitation scared him more than anything. "I've already been checked," she replied softly, avoiding his eyes. "They said everything was fine." "Then why won't you tell me anything?" Alder snapped, the frustration finally breaking through. Why won't you even say how many months? Why does it keep growing like this? Silence. Maren looked down at her belly, her fingers trembling slightly as they brushed across it. For a moment, it looked like she wanted to say something important. But she didn't. "I'll go," she whispered. That was enough. The drive to Wyoming felt longer than ever. The road stretched endlessly ahead, empty and quiet, but inside the truck, the tension was suffocating. Older kept glancing at her. Maren leaned back, eyes closed, breathing unevenly. Sweat formed on her forehead even though the air was cold. Something was wrong. Not rumors. Not gossip. Something real. At the hospital, they didn't waste time. The doctor, a calm, experienced man named Dr. Hayes, reviewed her file, then immediately ordered a full scan. The room fell silent as the ultrasound machine flickered to life. Alder stood beside her, his hand gripping hers tightly. He didn't even realize how hard he was squeezing until she winced, but she didn't pull away. The screen slowly filled with shapes. Then movement. "There," the doctor said quietly. 2 small figures appeared. "They're twins." For a brief second, relief hit Alder like a wave. Twins. That explained it. That had to be it. Everything suddenly made sense. Until it didn't. Because the doctor didn't smile. Instead, his eyes narrowed. He leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the device, scanning again and again. Alder felt his heartbeat start to rise. "What is it?" he asked. The doctor didn't answer immediately. He moved the scanner lower, then to the side, his expression tightening with every second. Finally, he turned the monitor slightly away, as if trying to process what he was seeing before saying it out loud. "There's something else." The words dropped heavy into the room. Maren's fingers curled around the edge of the bed. "What do you mean?" Alder demanded, his voice low but shaking. The doctor took a slow breath. "The babies are fine. Their development is normal." He paused. "But there's a large mass inside the uterus. Very large. And it's growing unusually fast." Alder blinked. "A mass." Maren's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. The doctor nodded. "A tumor." The word hit harder than any rumor ever could. Everything went silent. Not whispers. Not suspicion. Just raw, terrifying truth. "It's expanding alongside the pregnancy," the doctor continued. "That's why her abdomen is increasing at this rate. Not just because of the twins, but because of this." Alder slowly let go of Maren's hand. Not because he wanted to, but because he didn't know what to hold onto anymore. "So what do we do?" he asked. The doctor didn't hesitate this time. "We remove it." Hope flickered, then died instantly. But removing it now would require ending the pregnancy. The room froze. Maren shook her head immediately, tears forming before she even realized it. "No. If we don't," the doctor continued, voice steady but grave, "the tumor will keep growing. It can compress her organs, affect her breathing, and create life-threatening complications. Waiting increases the risk, for her and for the babies." Alder looked at Maren. She looked back at him. No words. But everything was there. Fear. Pain. And a choice neither of them was ready to make. "I'm not giving them up," Maren said, her voice suddenly firm despite the tears. "I don't care how hard it gets. I'm keeping them." Alder closed his eyes. This wasn't about rumors anymore. This wasn't about what people said. This was about survival. And for the first time, he realized the real nightmare hadn't even begun yet. From that moment on, everything turned into a race against time. Maren didn't go home to rest, she went home to endure. Every single day became a test of how much pain her body could take without breaking. The tumor kept growing. The babies kept growing. And her body was being crushed between them. At first, Alder tried to stay strong. He followed every instruction the doctors gave. Weekly checkups. Strict diet. Monitoring every symptom. He drove hours back and forth to the hospital, never complaining, never showing fear in front of her. But fear was there. Every single time he looked at her. Because Maren was changing. Not just physically, but in a way that made his chest tighten every time he noticed it. She could barely stand up without help. Her breathing became heavier, shorter. At night, she couldn't sleep. She would sit upright, clutching her belly, whispering softly like she was trying to calm something inside her. Sometimes she wasn't whispering to the babies. Sometimes, she whispered like she was talking to something else. And every time that happened, she would go to the barn. Even when she was exhausted. Even when she could barely walk. She still went to Onyx. Alder followed her once. He didn't announce himself. He just stood at the entrance, watching. Maren leaned against the stall, her forehead pressed lightly against the horse's neck. Her breathing was uneven, her voice barely audible. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. Onyx didn't move. Didn't make a sound. Just stood there, still calm present. Then slowly, the horse lowered its head and rested it gently against her shoulder. Maren closed her eyes. And for the first time in days, she looked peaceful. Alder felt something twist inside him. He didn't understand it. Didn't like it. But he couldn't deny it. That horse was the only thing calming his wife when he couldn't. He stepped back quietly, saying nothing. Because right now, none of that mattered. What mattered was this. Maren was getting worse. By the 5th month, things spiraled. She started fainting. Not once. Not twice. But repeatedly. One morning, Alder found her collapsed near the kitchen table, her body cold, her breathing shallow. He carried her to the truck without even thinking, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped the keys. At the hospital, the doctors didn't even hide their concern anymore. The tumor is growing faster than we expected. That sentence hit harder than anything before. We need to monitor her constantly now, Dr. Hayes said. This isn't something we can manage from home much longer. Maren heard every word. But she didn't change her decision. Not even a little. I'm not stopping, she said quietly, her voice weak but unbreakable. As long as they're alive, I'm staying with them. Alder looked at her. And in that moment he realized something terrifying. There was no turning back anymore. This wasn't a decision. It was a path they were already too far down to leave. They brought her home, but it wasn't the same. Now every hour felt dangerous. Alder barely slept. He watched her constantly, afraid that if he closed his eyes for even a moment she might stop breathing. And outside, the rumors got worse. Someone had taken a photo of Maren. Just one moment. Her standing outside, her belly enormous, her face pale and exhausted. That photo spread online within hours. And the comments. They weren't whispers anymore. They were brutal. That doesn't look human. There's no way that's normal. I've seen animals pregnant that look like that. Alder read them. Every single one. His hands shook as he scrolled. His jaw tightened until it hurt. But when he looked at Maren, lying there barely able to move, still holding her belly protectively, he realized something. Those people didn't matter. None of them understood what was really happening. They didn't see the pain. They didn't see the fight. They didn't see the truth. Only he did. And that truth was getting worse every day. By the 6th month, the doctors made the call. She has to be admitted. No discussion. No delay. This is too dangerous now. The day she left the ranch felt wrong. Too quiet. Too final. Maren stopped at the barn before getting into the truck. Of course she did. She walked slowly toward Onyx, her steps unsteady, her breathing heavy. The horse was already there, waiting. Like it knew. She reached out, placing her hand against its face. "I'll come back," she whispered. "You have to wait for me." Onyx exhaled softly, pressing its head closer. Alder watched from a distance. And for the first time, he didn't feel jealousy. He didn't feel suspicion. He felt something else. Something he didn't want to admit. Because deep down, it felt like that horse understood exactly what was about to happen. And he didn't. Maren turned, walking back slowly. Alder helped her into the truck. And as they drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Onyx was still standing there. Not moving. Just watching. Until they disappeared from sight. And somehow, that image stayed with him longer than anything else. Because in his chest, one thought kept growing louder. Something terrible was coming. And this time, there would be no stopping it. The hospital became their world, and every second inside it felt like standing on the edge of something that could collapse at any moment. Maren was no longer allowed to leave her bed. Machines surrounded her. Monitors tracked every heartbeat, every breath, every tiny change inside her body. The tumor had grown so large it was pushing everything upward. Her lungs, her stomach, even her heart struggled to keep up. Breathing became a battle. Eating became impossible. And sleeping didn't exist anymore. Alder stayed beside her day and night. He stopped going home. Stopped thinking about the ranch. Stopped thinking about anything beyond the room she was lying in. Because every time he looked at her, she looked weaker. Her skin turned pale, almost translucent. Dark circles formed under her eyes. Even lifting her hand seemed to take effort. But despite all of that, her hand never left her belly. Like she was holding on. Not to life. But to them. The twins. Doctors came in constantly. Adjusting medication. Running tests. Whispering outside the door. And every time they spoke, Alder could hear it in their tone. They were running out of time. "The pressure is increasing," Dr. Hayes said one evening, his voice low but urgent. "The tumor is compressing her lungs. If this continues, she won't be able to breathe properly." "How long?" Alder asked. The doctor didn't answer immediately. That silence said everything. Maren heard it too. But she didn't panic. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and took a slow, painful breath. "I'm still here," she whispered. "That means they're still here." Alder clenched his jaw. He wanted to tell her to stop. To tell her it wasn't worth it. To beg her to choose herself. But every time he looked at her, he couldn't. Because this wasn't just stubbornness. This was something stronger. Something he couldn't break. Days passed. Then weeks. And then, everything started to fall apart. It happened in the middle of the night. No warning. No gradual change. Just pain. Maren suddenly gasped, her body arching as a sharp wave tore through her. Her hands gripped the sheets, her entire body trembling. "Alder," she choked. He was already awake. Already moving. Already pressing the emergency button. Doctors rushed in within seconds. "What's happening?" Alder shouted. "Contractions," one nurse said quickly. "That's impossible," another replied. It's too early. The tumor is forcing it, Dr. Hayes cut in, his voice sharp. We don't have time.
Maren screamed.
Not from fear. From pain so intense it felt like her body was tearing itself apart from the inside. Her breathing became erratic.
Her Vision blurred.
The room spun. Alder, she whispered again, weaker this time. He grabbed her hand immediately. I'm here.
I am right here.
But his voice shook. Because he could see it. He could feel it. This was it. They were out of time. Prep the ore. Now. Dr. Hayes ordered. Everything moved at once.
Machines bepet luder.
Nurses rushed. The bed was unlocked and pushed forward. Maren's grip tightened around Alder's hand. Take care of them, she whispered. No, he said immediately, his voice breaking. You're going to tell them yourself. You hear me? You're not leaving. But she didn't answer. Her eyes were already closing. Stay with me, he shouted. No response. Blood pressure dropping. A nurse yelled. Move faster. They reached the operating room. And then, Alder was stopped. A nurse stepped in front of him. You can't go in. He froze. For a second, he didn't understand. Then it hit him. He let go of her hand. Just like that. The doors closed. And she was gone. Inside, everything became chaos. The doctors didn't hesitate. We deliver now, Dr. Hayes said. If we wait, we lose all three. The first incision was made. Fast.
Präzise.
No room for error. Heart rate unstable, someone called out. Keep going. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes felt like hours. Then, I see the first baby. A tiny cry broke through the tension. Weak. But alive. A girl, the nurse said quickly, rushing the newborn away. Second baby. Silence. Too long. I'm not getting a response. The room froze.
Stimulate.
They worked quickly. Urgently. A hand pressed gently against the baby's chest. Oxygen. Movement. Nothing. Come on, someone whispered. And then, a cry. Soft.
Fragile.
But real. The second baby was alive. Relief swept through the room. For half a second. Patient crashing. Another voice shouted. Everything shifted instantly. Because now, it wasn't about the babies anymore. It was about Maren. Blood pressure dropping. Pulse weakening. Her body was shutting down. Clamp it. We're losing her. Push fluids now. The room filled with urgency again. No one spoke about chances. No one spoke about outcomes. They just fought. Because that was all they could do. Outside.
Alder sat alone.
Hands clasped. Head down. Not moving. Not thinking. Not breathing. Just waiting. For a door to open. For a voice to speak. For something. Anything. To tell him what was left of his world. And when the doors finally opened, he stood up. Not ready. But knowing. Nothing would ever be the same after this moment. The door opened, but no one spoke right away. Alder rushed forward, his chest tight, his voice barely holding together. Is she alive? Dr. Hayes looked exhausted, his mask pulled down, his eyes heavy. The babies made it, he said first. Those words hit, but they weren't enough. And Maren? Alder pushed. A pause. Too long. She's still in surgery. The world seemed to tilt. Still. That meant one thing. She was not safe. They're trying to stop the bleeding, the doctor continued. The tumor caused massive complications. We're doing everything we can. Everything we can. Older had heard that phrase before. It never meant certainty. It meant hope and fear at the same time. He staggered back, dropping into the nearest chair, both hands covering his face. For the first time since all of this began, he broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just silently shaking. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. He couldn't tell anymore. Then a nurse approached him. You can see your children. The words felt unreal. Children. Plural. Alive. He stood up slowly, like his body didn't belong to him anymore, and followed her down a quiet hallway into the neonatal unit. The room was dim. Machines hummed softly. And there, 2 small incubators. Inside them, 2 tiny lives. Too small. Too fragile. Too still. Older stepped closer. His breath caught in his throat. The girl was slightly more active, her tiny fingers twitching weakly under the soft light. The boy lay quieter, his chest rising slowly, fighting for every breath. Wires. Tubes. Machines doing the work their bodies couldn't yet do. Older reached out, placing his hand gently against the glass. I'm here, he whispered. His voice broke. I am here, okay, I got you. The girl's fingers moved again. Just a little. But enough. Enough to shatter him completely. Tears fell freely now. Not from fear. Not from pain. But from something deeper. Something overwhelming. Because they were real. They were here. And Maren wasn't. Not yet. Hours later, the doors to the operating room opened again. This time, Dr. Hayes walked out slower. Older stood immediately. Didn't speak. Didn't ask. He just looked at him. Waiting. The doctor exhaled. Long. Heavy. We stabilized her. Older's knees almost gave out. She lost a lot of blood, the doctor continued. More than we expected. We removed the tumor successfully, but she's in critical condition. Will she wake up? Older asked. Another pause. We don't know. The words hit harder than anything before. Not dead. Not safe. Just unknown. She's in a coma right now. Her body needs time. The next few days are going to be very important. Older nodded slowly. He didn't trust his voice anymore. They let him see her. Maren lay there, motionless. Pale. Connected to machines. Barely recognizable as the woman who once laughed in the sunlight of their ranch. Older stepped closer. Took her hand. It was cold. We made it, he whispered. You did it, you hear me? They're here. Both of them. You kept your promise. No response. Just the quiet beeping of machines. He leaned closer. His forehead resting gently against her hand. I'm not losing you, he said softly. Not after everything. Not now. Days passed. Slow. Painful. Uncertain. Older didn't leave the hospital. He split his time between 2 places. The neonatal room. And Maren's bedside. Back and forth. Over and over. He spoke to her every day. Told her about the babies. About how the girl was stronger. About how the boy was still fighting. About how they needed her. He didn't know if she could hear him. But he said it anyway. Because he needed to believe she could. On the 4th day, something changed. A nurse rushed into the room. Alda, come here. His heart dropped instantly. What happened? She moved. Time stopped. Alder stepped closer to the bed. Maren. Nothing. Then, a slight movement. Her fingers. Just a twitch. Small. Almost invisible. But real. Maren, he whispered again, his voice shaking. Another movement. Her eyelids trembled. Then slowly, they opened. Light hit her eyes. Confusion. Weakness. Pain. But she was there. Alive. Alder let out a broken laugh, tears falling instantly. Hey, it's okay, you're okay. Her lips moved. Barely. The babies. He smiled through the tears. They're here. Both of them. You did it. Her eyes filled with tears. Not from pain. But from relief. She had made it. Against everything. Against the rumors. Against the fear. Against death itself. She had made it. And somewhere, deep down, Alder realized something. The real story was never about something unnatural. Never about fear. Never about the whispers. It was about this. A woman who refused to give up. And a fight that no one else had the strength to survive. Maren didn't recover overnight. Surviving the surgery was only the beginning. When she woke up, her body felt like it didn't belong to her anymore. Every breath hurt. Every movement sent waves of pain through her chest and abdomen. Tubes, machines, for lines. She was surrounded by them, held together by medicine and sheer will. But none of that mattered to her. Because the first thing she asked about was her children. The doctors didn't let her see them immediately. She was too weak. Her body had lost too much blood, and even sitting up could be dangerous. But Maren insisted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly again and again. I need to see them. On the second day after waking up, they finally agreed. A nurse carefully helped her into a wheelchair. Alder stood beside her the entire time, one hand on her shoulder, as if afraid she might disappear if he let go. The neonatal room felt colder than before. Or maybe it was just fear. Maren's eyes locked onto the two incubators the moment she entered. Her breathing stopped. For a second, she couldn't move. Because now, it was real. Two tiny lives. Her lives. They wheeled her closer. The girl, slightly stronger, moved her fingers again, just like before. The boy was still weaker, his chest rising slowly under the steady rhythm of the machine. Maren's lips trembled. My babies. Tears rolled down her face without her even noticing. She lifted her hand, slowly, painfully, and placed it against the glass. I am here, okay. Her voice cracked. But I made it, I didn't leave you. Alder stood behind her, his hand tightening gently on her shoulder. They've been waiting, he said softly. Days turned into weeks. The fight didn't end, it just changed. Now it was about healing. About patience. About surviving one day at a time. Maren slowly regained strength. Step by step. Breath by breath. The doctors monitored her constantly to make sure the tumor wouldn't return. Treatments continued. Pain came and went. But she never complained. Not once. Because every day, she had something to hold on to. The twins. The girl improved faster. After weeks, she was finally strong enough to be held. The first time they placed her in Maren's arms, everything stopped. The machines. The fear. The pain. Maren looked down at the tiny face resting against her chest, and something inside her broke and healed at the same time. Hi, she whispered, her voice barely a breath. I'm your mom. The baby shifted slightly, as if recognizing the warmth. Maren closed her eyes, holding her closer. And for the first time since all of this began, she felt peace. The boy took longer. There were nights when the machines beeped too fast. Moments when doctors rushed in. Times when Alder stood frozen, unable to breathe. But the boy held on. Just like his mother did. And slowly, he got stronger. Weeks later, both babies were finally stable enough to leave the incubators. And then, one quiet morning, they were discharged. The hospital doors opened. And for the first time in months, they stepped outside together. Not as two people anymore, but as a family of 4. The drive back felt different. The same road. The same sky. But everything had changed. When they reached the ranch, Maren asked to stop the car. Alder helped her out slowly. She stood there, holding one baby while Alder held the other. And then, she saw him. Onyx. The black stallion stood at the gate. Still. Silent. Watching. Exactly like the day they left. Maren took a slow step forward. Then another. Onyx moved too, slowly approaching, lowering his head as he got closer. No sudden movement. No fear. Just recognition. Maren reached out, her hand trembling slightly as it touched his face. "I'm back," she whispered. The horse exhaled softly, pressing closer, gentle, careful, as if aware of everything she had been through. Alder watched quietly. And this time, he understood. There was never anything strange. Never anything unnatural. Just a connection. A quiet, unspoken comfort that had helped her survive when nothing else could. Maren looked down at the babies. "This is Onyx," she said softly. "He waited for us." The horse lowered its head slightly, as if greeting them. The babies stirred. Alive. Safe. Real. And just like that, the rumors lost all meaning. Because the truth was standing right there. Not in whispers. Not in fear. But in something far stronger. Love. Time passed. The town changed. People who once laughed stopped. People who once whispered stayed silent. Some even came to apologize. But Maren didn't care anymore. She didn't need their approval. She didn't need their understanding. Because she had already won. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the fields, painting everything gold, Maren sat on the porch. One baby in her arms. Alder beside her, holding the other. Onyx resting nearby. Quiet. Peaceful. Complete. Alder looked at her. "You remember what they said back then?" Maren smiled faintly. "I remember." He shook his head slightly. "They were all wrong." Maren looked at her children. Then at the horizon. "No," she said softly. "They just didn't know the truth." And the truth was simple. There was never anything monstrous. Only a mother who refused to let go. And because of that, everything survived.